What is going on, guys, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Take a Mulligan podcast. My name is Matt Mulligan, and today I have Brian Logan on the podcast. I wanted him on the podcast for a while now. He is our neighbor upstairs in the Plymouth 400. He has his own band, Hammer and the Nails, a Plymouth local, so he's after my own heart growing up here in Plymouth. And his story is all about, for me at least, my biggest takeaway was work-life balance. He works for the Plymouth 400. He has his own band where they're touring in Europe, and it's incredible that he has a family, a band, and works a full-time job and makes it all work. For me, work-life balance is very important, and to him, it's very important. So there are great takeaways from him. He's kind of redone his life where he's moved out to the Worcester area, or Framingham area actually, came back to Plymouth to pursue more tourism jobs and ultimately be with the Plymouth 400. And his band is touring all over the place. So he's got a pretty incredible story, and he's just an awesome person. We both vibe on music, so it was a great talk. And here we go, episode number 2. Let's do it. So welcome. You are on the Take a Mulligan podcast. You literally went from Plymouth to Boston, back to Plymouth just for us, right?
I did. We got a bright start early this morning. We left at 8 o'clock from here, and we kind of did the whole carpool thing and drove all the way to Boston to the State House, and had our meeting. I feel like I'm low. Had our meeting and made our way back this afternoon.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, I feel honored that you made that whole trek just for me.
Yeah, just for you.
Just
Absolutely.
for me. Just for me.
Got it. Yeah.
So in the intro, I introduced a little bit about who you are.
Yep.
But we originally met probably a good 3 years ago now, I think.
Yeah, coming up on
right?
it. Yeah.
And this was before you were in. So you're following me. You were not in this building when I was. I was in this building 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You were still in the Chamber of Commerce building, right? Because I had
forgot
moved in.
that you beat us here. That's
I
funny.
beat you here. I was a trendsetter.
Yeah.
So remember that.
But not long, right? You had just...
No. I had just moved in maybe 6 months and you guys came in,
Okay.
I think.
All right. Yeah, because it was April of 2018 that we moved in.
Yep.
Wow, so you were settled in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were all settled in the little office right across the hall here.
Yeah.
Now we're in the bigger office and
crazy
doing the podcast.
Look how far you've
Look
come.
how far we've come. Yeah.
Wow.
But so when we met, do you remember that day we met?
Yeah, I think, let's call it a Thursday afternoon. I think I remember you coming in. It was probably fall of 2017.
Yeah. You're doing good so far.
In the old office at the Chamber of Commerce building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had found you so when I first started the company, I was looking to, grow my influence.
Yeah.
Chamber of Commerce made a lot of sense. And then I heard about this thing called Plymouth 400.
Yeah,
I honestly didn't really know a lot about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it just was me and I grew up in Plymouth, but just didn't know too much about it.
Sure.
So I ended up finding you on the website. And I think I just emailed you asking if I could get involved somehow and just grow my network, how I could help you guys and vice versa.
Yeah.
And you guys have been
And I feel
great,
like you, because we were in the same building as Destination Plymouth and as the Chamber, I feel like maybe you were there for a Chamber meeting one day and then...
Yeah, because I was always in there.
They mentioned reaching out to me. I feel like
it could have been that
some
too.
connection with
it could have
the Chamber.
Been. It could have been, yeah. But yeah, it's been 2.5 years maybe now since we've worked together.
Yeah, because I had just started. So I had just started with Plymouth 400.
That's right.
In October, and this was right after that, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
So where were you before that when you came to P400?
Where was I? I had come from Staples.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was doing marketing, sort of on the, I had a foot in the retail side and a foot in the corporate side of Staples. So I interfaced with the stores and with corporate in Framingham, Massachusetts, doing business development, working with companies, kind of, let's say it was Plymouth 400 or Hawk Visuals.
Sure.
I would be the one to work with you on marketing programs because we had a lot of outsourced services. So we would do printing, even email marketing, all sorts of marketing services that Staples offers that a lot of people don't realize that Staples offers.
I still didn't know that. You just told me that.
Yeah. So it's not just the copy center. It's not just, making copies.
There's a lot more they offer.
Once they realize at the copy center that you're a business and that you're coming in frequently, because you'd be surprised how many huge companies just have to do quick presentations. I don't want to make this into a Staples commercial, but have to make quick copies for presentation. So then once people there on the front line staff would realize that, they would pass them off to me, and then I would be sort of a consultant with that company.
Sure.
Mostly Eastern Massachusetts, from about the Braintree, Weymouth area all the way to Provincetown.
Okay. But at that time, were you living in Plymouth? Because you're a Plymouth guy, right?
Yep.
So you were commuting all the way out to Framingham in that area?
Yeah. Well, all over the place, because I had an office at the Weymouth store and at the Hyannis store, and then also in Westboro, actually, which was a satellite office of the headquarters in Framingham,
right?
Where we would meet up with our team, but then I'd be out in the field and kind of, again, doing some time in the stores and then back at the office. So, yeah, driving all around.
Good. No, that's good. Get the miles on the car. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So tell me, you're a Plymouth guy. I know that because we both go to the same church and, all that type of stuff. But how did you make that transition from living in Plymouth to now you're kind of doing this whole commuting thing from Framingham, and now you're kind of back to Plymouth as a part of P400? How did that little kind of circle work?
It is wild, because I had never really worked professionally in Plymouth or even in the Plymouth area. I did a little bit with Staples because of the the footprint that Staples has here. But for the most part, I grew up in Plymouth, and like many Plymouth kids, the idea was to get out of the suburbs, go to college, and go and do something. So I did that, went to Emerson College, and soon after that, I actually came back here. So my first job was for about a year. I was working in Plymouth as a full-time substitute teacher, which was pretty amazing. It was at the brand new then Plymouth South Middle School.
Wow.
And then through that, I got a teaching gig at night where I was teaching evening high school English to students in Plymouth as well, at Plymouth North High School. So I thought for a fleeting moment that I was on that track of becoming a teacher. And I quickly abandoned that track.
What happened that made you not want to do
I loved it. I loved working with the kids, and I was really young. So it was trial by fire, especially not so much as a substitute, even though that can be rough on certain days.
Sure.
I had a lot of fun with the kids there, because I'd be in a health class one day, I'd be in a math class the next day, wherever they put me. But then with the evening high school English class, that was for kids who needed extra credits, who had either dropped out, failed out, or just had some kind of need to get additional credits. So I was teaching 2 evening high school English classes to kids who in many cases were like 2 to 4 years younger than me, calling me Mr. Logan.
Really?
So that was trial by fire.
So
yeah, that was, yeah. And I think now about those kids are my peers now. And I did not think of them as my peers then, just because sort of a mental trick you have to do with yourself to know you're in charge of the class,
right.
And to get their attention. They were like, oh, come on, who's this guy?
Yeah.
Mr. Logan, we're going to call him that.
2 years older than I am.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to have this guy teach me.
Which, if you do the math, if they were only a couple of years younger than me, they were outside of the usual age of a high school student.
Yeah.
So I was teaching all different types of kids.
Yeah.
So that was a challenging thing. But yeah, through talking to other, teachers and kind of gauging the trajectory of teaching, it just wasn't for me at that time. And I wanted to go into the corporate world. Not to be in corporate America for the sake of that, but to kind of go with what I had gone to school for, which was communications and marketing and writing, editing, all of that kind of stuff. But fast forward, without going through my whole resume, I started out, my first office job was with Grand Circle Travel in Boston as a copywriter and a copy editor for this international travel company, Grand Circle Travel, who owned their own river ships, operated their own land and cruise tours, and did all of their direct marketing, as opposed to a travel agent model where they're just selling someone else's product. They developed their own product, sold their own product, and they were a huge direct marketer. So I was in a creative marketing department, doing a whole lot of editing, working on catalogs, writing, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Which lends itself to your P400 job, right? Because
it really is.
Is it kind of like a pretty even step to go from there to there? Or was there?
I mean, this was a long time ago, but at that time, most of the marketing was offline. It's kind of showing my age, but most of it was writing and editing for catalogs and postcards and direct mail. But very quickly that started to grow into web and email. And I sort of worked my way up in the company and ended up going from the creative side of things to the product marketing side of things. So I was developing cruises and developing marketing plans for international travel.
Wow.
So that was really exciting, good opportunities to travel and learn about the world. But always that combination of tourism and marketing. I continued kind of on that track and ended up working for a competitor of theirs called Go Ahead Tours, which is a division of EF Education. A lot of people might know EF Education from just virtually any student tour you hear of where kids are going to, let's say, London or a European learning trip. 75% of them are through EF student tours.
Really?
But I was working for not the student tours, but the adult tours division, where a lot of that was the teachers themselves who had retired and become just independent travelers. So doing a lot of that same stuff, doing the marketing, product development for the travel company. But fast forward, to where I am now, I sort of combine that background of tourism, of travel, with marketing, with the product that I grew up with, which is Plymouth, which is this whole history of 1620 and the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people. So it was really great when I came across this opportunity to be able to take all that professional experience with my sort of interest in growing up in this area. So that really was something I never expected happening. And I always did have a romantic vision of, wouldn't it be nice to work kind of in my hometown? But there was never really an opportunity that combined my background.
And now you kind of found it.
I found it. But of course, what do? I go find one that has an expiration date on it.
I know.
This whole thing is about 2020, which we're now in. When you and I first met, it was the lead up to 2020. So it didn't seem so imminent. So it's wild because, just as the calendar changed and became 2020, and this all started, in some ways it also started to end, because now we're counting down.
Right.
But it's exciting. I'm excited to be involved.
Before we get more into that, because I have some questions on that too. So how do you feel, and it's such a thing that I thought about too. So you mentioned before that there's a stigma behind you kind of grow up here and then you should leave to do something bigger and better. Right, in Plymouth. It seems like a lot of my friends have the same stigma. I have friends that are the rappers who just hang out in Plymouth and they want to do the rapping career, which is like a whatever. But a lot of people think that you have to get out of where you grew up and do bigger things, go to Boston, go to New York, do bigger things. But now you went to Framingham, that area, and now you're back here doing something professionally. Same thing with me. I grew up here in Plymouth. I went to Boston, worked up there and ended up going to school there, and now I'm back here in Plymouth, right where I started from. Right. So like in the back of my mind, which I don't know if it was in yours, I had this weird thing in my head, like is this cool to come back to where I grew up and I'm now with people who I see who are not really doing a lot with their life because they're the same jobs they've done in high school. But what makes me feel better is that I have my own company and you're working for a great organization as well, so at least you're doing something. But like, was that something in the back of your mind where I'm now back where I started from and grew up and I'm working in a town that I grew up in? Did that at all come through your mind?
Oh, absolutely. I overanalyze everything. So of course I did. Of course I thought about that. But for me, it was a little bit different because I went to school in Boston, worked, aside from that one stint of working back here in the school system, was working in Boston, right in South Boston, then in Cambridge with another company that I mentioned. And during that time, I was living in Braintree and Weymouth. So no plans of coming back here. My folks are down here. My family's down here. So I was always visiting. But it was really family that brought me back here, starting my own family and then coming back here to kind of raise my kids.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it wasn't work that brought me back. So for me, then it was more of like, okay, I can go back home as a bedroom community,
Right.
but then commute. And I did that wild, crazy commute for way too many years of driving from
Terrible
Plymouth
commute.
to Boston. The worst one was Cambridge because it was like 3 commutes in one. You know, whether I was driving or taking the commuter rail, it was, you know, getting up Route 3, getting up the expressway, but then working my way through town to get to Cambridge. So I was spending so many hours on the road and giving away so much time. It was quite a trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, when I first graduated college, my fiance and I lived in my parents' house in Plymouth, and for me, it was great. The office here was 15 minutes at the time. I was working for a company in the Pine Hills, 15 minutes, but her commute was an hour 40 each way. Commuter rail to the city, to the office, back home, back, and it was terrible. Now we're in Abington, which makes a lot of sense, but it's amazing how commuting and travel time puts a huge negative effect on your life. If you're spending half of your day traveling and you get home, like, okay,
right,
now I got to see my kids and my wife, and I got to make myself feel happy and try to put on a brave face for them when I'm just exhausted and tired. So I definitely get that.
Yeah. But, you know, and as far as that stigma of leaving, I'm projecting, you know, kind of the kid me when I say that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel that way anymore. You know, if I were to say to my kids, like, you know, what are you going to do with your life?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you got to get out of this town, because I feel like there is a lot of opportunity.
There's a ton of stuff here.
And so much has changed in the Plymouth area from when I was growing up. You know, even from 15 years ago, there just wasn't that much to do for a younger person, you know, somebody who had just graduated. So many signs were pointing towards, you know, towards leaving, you know, not just going to school, not just working, but just doing stuff, like having fun. There wasn't much to do around here.
Well, there's breweries,
you know, we're talking about the 90s and stuff. So there really wasn't much. So most of my friends left at that point and scattered every which way.
Yeah.
I had some that left, so I never imagined that I'd come back. But what I've come back to, though, is really a whole different community.
Of course. And you guys are also helping to create a great environment here with the P400, because the events are starting, and there's a lot going on. And like you said, now you are kind of at the downturn. I mean, you're ramping up and you're here. It's 2020, but after that, you kind of
career-wise,
So I guess, so what do you, because you spent the last how many years at P400 ramping up for this year?
We became a 501c nonprofit in 2012, but generally, you know, like at the meeting I was at earlier today, we say we've been at this for about 10 years.
10 years.
But the real, you know, work has been going on since, you know, maybe about 2014, thereabouts. Because in 2012, we had only one staff member. So in terms of having a fully functional staff, state commission, board of directors, it's been a number of years now, but not that full 10 years.
So how does this, I'm so curious about how this works with you guys. So now, because you are at 2020, you are here, it's full force now. Because you've spent so much time planning stuff, like what does this year look for you as far as workload? Like how do you manage now that it's here doing it? And then after you guys disband, what is that process like from now until after 2020?
It's really wild. It's almost like a startup in a way, you know, that we've been going through that startup phase all this time. Establishing the office and then reestablishing the office here in this building, which was such, you know, you alluded to it earlier, but moving here was just so great for us because we were on the third floor of a building that wasn't as accessible to the public. And now here we are in a post office building where the public are coming in every single day. They have to come in and get their mail. And we have 2 office suites upstairs from where we're sitting now. So that's been a great move to move right downtown, right on the edge of Leiden Street, which is where the original settlement was built in 1620 and 1621 for the most part. The street that Plymouth Plantation is based on is Leiden Street. Sorry, I keep hitting the microphone.
No, you're good. You're good.
So a lot of it has been awareness building until this year, kind of getting the word out there through the license plate campaign. A lot of people have the Plymouth 400 license plate.
Oh yeah. See them all around town.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And having been in Boston today, I see them well beyond this area as well.
Yeah,
because
I'm sure.
It's a Commonwealth-wide commemoration. So,
yeah.
But this year looks like a transition for us from that awareness mode to now execution mode. So it's been all about building up the brand, establishing the logo, establishing our partnerships, like with you, working with you, finding vendors to work with, contracting with event planners. But now it's starting in April, for April 24th for the opening ceremony. It's go, it's doing the events.
Yeah.
So I think workload wise, it'll be quite a shift, from doing, in where I sit, it's PR, it's communications, it's marketing. We're interfacing with tourism groups, making sure people come here in 2020, which they are, because we talk to them all the time, all over the world. But that's where we have to rely on our board, rely on our state commission, and we have an army of volunteers. So we'll definitely be looking to them now to kind of help with that workload.
Of course, yeah. Do you know, is there a number that you're expecting of people coming to Plymouth? I've heard so many numbers of
It's a hard
influx,
question. It's really hard because we will have tickets to certain events, and they're going on sale later this month. Geez, we're already in February.
I know, crazy.
But it's really hard to gauge without having, let's say, with a concert, you know exactly who's coming. You have tickets sold.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you sell some at the door, but for the most part, maybe you sell out in advance. This just isn't like that. It's a public event. A lot of it is free, with ticketed aspects to certain events. So a lot of what we've had to do is look to the past to kind of benchmark who's coming, and what a commemoration like this might do. So one of the first things that this organization did was look to past commemorations like Jamestown in 2007 when they had their 400th anniversary. And we worked closely with the organizers of Jamestown to see what kind of interest they got. But one of the key differences is they did theirs in about 2 weeks. It was a series of celebratory events, and then that was the end of it. We intentionally spread ours out throughout the year. So, it's not end to end, but April to November, we'll have events going on between our own signature events that we're putting on, that we're responsible for, and our partners' events that are going on throughout the area, throughout the state.
Yeah, the impact lasts for a lot longer than
exactly spreading out the impact for businesses, easing the burden on the services in the area, especially Plymouth being the epicenter of this commemoration. So we intentionally spread it out. But the other benchmarks, we're looking to attractions like Plymouth Plantation, working with the tourism office here in town and talking about past visitation. So if we were we looked at our best years and kind of created an algorithm, not very scientific, but the best we could do, and said we'll triple tourism in 2020. So we're expecting maybe not just in Plymouth, but statewide, maybe 3 million people.
Wow.
So
incredible.
It's huge.
Yeah. And we're here. We're now second month into the 2020
quadricentennial.
Into the quadricentennial. Yeah. So I also wanted to talk too. So have you always had a history thing in your mind? Like, have you always been interested in history being in Plymouth, or has that grown with the P400?
That's a really good question. Short answer is it's definitely grown with being involved in this. But I did always have kind of pride in this history coming from this area. It was hard not to, going to Indian Brook Elementary School, which I think, did you go there?
I went to Manamet. But I played baseball at the MRA right near Indian Brook.
Yep. So between the Wampanoag history and the Pilgrim history, I was surrounded by it, between the street names, between, as you know, field trips. Even though we were right here in town, we would take field trips to Plymouth Rock and to Plymouth Plantation. It's wild to think about it now. Yep. But just being inundated with it, I probably took it for granted at times, but I did always have an appreciation for it. And I always liked history, but not nearly as much as I am engaged with it now.
Yeah.
Particularly, colonial history, this era, I hadn't focused as much on that, maybe more World War II history, Vietnam, the larger events in history that we were taught in school. But now learning so much of it from the inside out, it's pretty incredible. And I realize now that it's not this thing that is in textbooks, that just lives in textbooks, particularly our history here. We're a baby of a nation, 400 years. I mean, it's crazy, especially coming from that tourism background where we were sending Americans for the most part with the companies I worked for overseas to places like London, Paris, Rome, these places with thousands of years of history. When I then, look at our history here, of course, before the Pilgrims arrived, the Native Americans were here for thousands of years. But in terms of colonizing this area and then ultimately this nation, it's so young. It's brand new.
Yeah.
So it's still going. Mm-hmm. And when I sit at some of these meetings that we're at, where they're Pilgrim descendants, Wampanoag descendants of those original people that greeted the Pilgrims when they were here. It's like history is continuing. They're still having some of the same conversations that were had back then. It's not picking apart and reflecting on what happened at a certain time. It's talking about relations now between these Mayflower descendants and these Wampanoag people. Mm-hmm. And not just that, but the people that came after, I say you and I don't know if you're a Mayflower descendant, but
I don't know, actually. I want to find out.
People with families that are more recent immigrants, the turn of the last century for the most part, that really created the population boom. So the people that took Plymouth from that original colonial era to through the Industrial Revolution with the Italian immigrants, the Portuguese, North Plymouth is so much history there with Cordage Park. And you got to stop me. I could go off on tangents.
No,
and forever. But there's so much more history to this area than just the Pilgrim story. At one point, Cordage Park was the largest manufacturer of rope and twine for the entire world. And what was that
crazy?
for?
Yeah.
It was for shipping. It was rope and twine for shipping, for the shipping industry.
Yep.
So that's what really kind of propelled this area forward past that original, the 1600s.
Yeah.
The population stayed relatively the same for those first 100, 200 years. Mm-hmm. But then with the Industrial Revolution, everything changed for this area. And so much of that history is still here. Cordage Park is still there. There's a great museum over there for that. But it's maybe a forgotten part. Not a lot of people talk about the rope traditions of Plymouth. But it's there, and it's incredible. Yeah. So, getting back to your original question, delving into this history for Plymouth 400 has helped me learn so much more about this area and about Plymouth Colony and about Mass Bay Colony and how it all came together.
Well, I think also you're a great example of, and I found this through my company too. If you belong to a company organization where their vision aligns with yours and your interest group or your interest in general, that makes things a lot easier. I've worked many jobs, I'm sure you have too, where the ideals of the company, the way it ran, just doing the job itself just wasn't interesting to you. So for you, going to work just didn't really seem like it was very fun. Mm-hmm. It seems like now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming you're going to say yes, with this organization you're with, and I'm going to get to your band in a second, the interest that you have in your personal life and this company seem to align in a way that it doesn't really seem like work. You're kind of working towards a vision that, and also you're from Plymouth, so you're creating something that you want to have people in the future enjoy because you grew up here, and it seems like that whole kind of clashing of your interest and their interest seems to be a great fit.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing too, because sometimes you can, as much as they do say do what you love, that can be really challenging, because if you are passionate about something, like I am, I'm passionate about my hometown, America's hometown. And being so much more than, I always give the example of, at one point I saw something on the Travel Channel about being on the top 10 list for most underwhelming tourist attractions. What they were talking about was Plymouth Rock, not Plymouth in general. Yeah. But how it's built up that you're going to see this amazing
giant
rock,
obelisk,
and then you get there.
And then this little...
Right. So I really wanted, and I, of course, I was never caught up in that. I know that people joke about that, but I know it's so much more than the rock size. Mm-hmm. It's just because it's a rock, you expect it to be... something grandiose, but it's simply not. It's more the story and the significance of it.
Right.
So yes, I've wanted to kind of get that story out to other people and have this commemoration be a turning point for tourism to this area. But that can be challenging at times, so for instance, and we'll talk about the music stuff, but combining what you are really passionate about with commerce and with making money on it can work. And there's a lot of synergies there, but it's also really challenging because it's so personal. So that manifests itself in different ways.
Yeah, I got the same effect when I first started my company too. It was just for fun for the longest time. It was probably a year before I made anything. Yeah. And I loved doing it. Yeah. But I was at a point where my job I was working, I just didn't like it. I hated doing it. So this was my outlet to say, okay, screw it. Let me try to make money at this. And I did. And now, yes, I definitely enjoy what I'm doing a lot more than I would have. But there are days where I kind of miss that very beginning stage of my company where it wasn't a company yet. It was just me shooting video for whatever, doing stuff in Plymouth, doing drone stuff, doing real estate photos just for fun. Yeah. So it's hard to kind of get back that spark sometimes, but I'd much rather have that than working 9 to 5 anywhere.
Sure. Right. Yeah. No, it's such a good point. And it's wild for me too, because it's ephemeral, it's fleeting. It's something that's obviously it'll turn into something else. A lot of us here on the staff here understand that the type of work we're doing can give way to so many other great opportunities. Yeah. But it's interesting to have an opportunity that is going somewhere and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but then has a finish line at the end.
But also not a finish line, but this is a decent segue. You are in a band, which is, when I first found this out, I couldn't believe it that you were a lead singer of. Well, so what type of music would you say the band is? We talked about this before, but like I said, it's like a punk rock, but you'll say it's different. Like, is that kind of what it would be?
Yeah. The only reason it's hard to describe is, I guess, depending on what you're interested in, I describe it a little bit differently. Depends on what people are into at the time. I did a podcast once and he was calling it metal. Sure. The problem is that with my band, and we're all about the same age, we all came up through, this is a sharp turn in the conversation, isn't it?
I was going to segue into you had like this little passion. Now you're taking this to the next level, which is kind of how this fills into it, but continue.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Depending on what your background is, we have those influences of metal. We have influences of punk, classic rock. Mm-hmm. So when people say, what kind of music do you play? For lack of a better term, I say, I don't know, a punk band. But it's a very niche kind of audience too that listens to what our band plays. Yeah. It's not for the faint of heart, I don't think.
I love it. I mean, that's my music anyways. But, so how did you... We talked about you getting into Staples and you did tourism and P400, but where in that process and timeline did this band pop up?
Well, for me, I've always had a band. I've had a band practice every week, if not once a month, since I was in 8th grade. So for me,
so it goes back a while.
Always some kind of band.
Was it in your family music, or was it just, were you the rising star in the music realm in your family?
That star is not risen, my friend.
Rising star.
Yeah, rising, right. Still rising.
Still rising.
Always a musical family. And my dad plays guitar, so there was always music, and we have piano in the house. There was always someone singing. Always a love for music. My dad always played guitar at church. So definitely a musical family, but no one was in bands per se. So that was more of a friend thing here in Plymouth. Yeah. So it's that combination of whatever it is that we're talking about that's in the DNA here in Plymouth. Yeah. At that time, I said going back to 8th grade, and then 9th grade is probably when I started playing live. There were a ton of kids in this area that played in bands. I don't know what it was, but there was an explosion. A lot of people talk about when the Beatles came out in the 60s, that one of the first things that happened is people went and bought the record. And the second thing that happened was people formed a band. They immediately were like, oh, I can relate to these guys. I want to make music. For some reason, when I was growing up, and I don't know if this is happening at the same rate, but tons of kids I knew were forming bands. And a lot of it was, at that time, alternative rock.
I was going to ask, is that really
bands.
what it was? Was that type?
I
Because
think
was
it was
that like that early 90s? Or
For
when?
me, it was metal. The first thing was metal. I was
Sure.
definitely like a metalhead, long hair, the whole thing in the late 80s, early 90s. But metal quickly for me gave way to hardcore and punk and everything kind of underground, more extreme music.
I wasn't in a band. I played literally with my friends 4 or 5 times playing guitar.
Yeah.
But my interest in music has drastically changed from when I've always been a huge music fan.
Yeah.
I'm always classic rock, blues, metal.
Yeah.
But when I got older, I got more into that hardcore stuff, like your type of music a little bit, but even more than that, like screamo
Heavier
type stuff, like really heavy, mostly because I needed gym music. I just was sick of the type I was listening to.
Yeah, hashtag gym tunes.
Hashtag gym tunes. Exactly, yeah. But it's amazing how that shift can happen, and it was suddenly for me. I remember one day, just my friend Matt Cook, if you see him, you'll think he is a quintessential metalhead. Big long beard, like some Monomarth, like that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And
was he the one that was going to go to one of our shows?
He was.
Point? Yeah.
We were going to go to one of those shows. Yeah, he's super into that stuff.
Or maybe he did. Didn't he end up?
I don't think he ended up going
to
that.
one that you didn't go to?
He might have. Maybe he did go to one of yours. He probably did. Was that the one at
the Middle East?
The Middle East.
Cambridge?
He probably went to that one then.
He did.
He did. Because you gave me a shirt to give to him, which he has. A shirt.
Yeah. It's all coming back.
It's all coming back to me now. Yeah. But he introduced me to heavier stuff, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like the screamo stuff. But it eventually grew on me, and I feel like I'm not old yet, but the older
I am,
you are definitely old. The older I get, the more little things keep in my head in music wise, and I feel like I gravitate more towards it. I'm still not into country. I'm slowly getting into it because my fiance is, but now I'm into more. Like I'll listen to jazz a little bit more than I have. There's like weird things that just pop up. And I'm like, okay, I'll try that out. Where before I'm just like classic rock,
right?
90s rock, Green Day. That's all I'll listen to. But now it's dramatically, my breadth of music has dramatically increased.
Isn't that cool though? How it's always there. Like you mentioned, jazz.
Yeah.
Jazz is always there waiting for you.
Of course it is. But jazz is in all types of music too. I mean, you might not know it, but the influences are always in there.
Yeah. And I'll listen. I have to be in certain moods, especially in the office here. If it's quiet enough, I'll put on jazz and play Miles Davis or John Coltrane or something, Dave Brubeck. I have to be in a certain mood for it. But it is cool that way about music that you don't have to suddenly get into everything all at once. And I see that with my kids, especially with access to the internet, and you can download any music you want. Unlike when I was a kid, if you liked something, you had to pursue it and go and find it.
Right.
And I hate to, be okay boomer about the whole thing, but it's the kind of thing where now it's just whenever you want, fine. Get into classical later on in life. Okay. Oh, now you're into even heavier stuff. It's there for you.
Yeah.
It is never too late. But for us with the band that I'm in now,
what's the name of the band, by the way?
I play in a band called Hammer and the Nails.
There it is.
Yeah. I've played in lots and lots of different bands. Always, I guess I started out, the first band was a more traditional, like heavy metal band. Like I said, I used to have long hair, and this was like 8th and 9th grade. And we were playing at that time bars somehow. I don't really know how. And I think back on that time, I don't know why it wasn't an issue that we were playing bars that our peers couldn't even get into. Like everybody was drinking and at that time smoking inside, and our parents were dropping us off in minivans.
That's hilarious.
Loading our gear in, and we're like, hey, what's going on, guys?
Playing metal music.
Yeah. And there weren't a lot of clubs that you could play at for all ages, at that point. But I also hadn't really learned about that world. So when I was first into metal, I didn't know about this whole underground world where kids were booking their own shows, doing all ages shows. And that's when I started getting into mostly like hardcore punk. And I discovered this whole underground world of people renting out American Legions, getting their own sound system, flyering for their own shows, which is probably, now that I think about it, probably the first seed of marketing and my interest in that whole thing. Because that's what I gravitated to, is setting up shows. I started booking shows as soon as I started having a band. And I loved the idea of spreading the word and designing the flyer.
Yeah, you were being attracted to the lifestyle of what this was becoming, right? This
Right.
whole underground
Yeah.
music was maybe not the lifestyle, but kind of the crowds and how you marketed it.
And doing it yourself, DIY,
doing it yourself,
that whole
yeah.
thing of kind of just, if there are, like I said, we were only finding these 21 plus bars that probably didn't really want to hear what we were playing. They wanted to hear Creedence. They wanted to hear cover songs. And we were like, well, we're going to play some metal.
Your own metal, or were you doing covers at that time?
We did a couple of really embarrassing covers.
What was your most embarrassing cover? Do you remember? You have to remember.
So my first band was called Third Rail. And we were, I guess, a metal band with some other influences. And because we were going to be playing at a bar in Hull with all like bikers and that, our guitar player, whose dad owned the club, insisted that we do like stuff that crowd would like. And it, gives me the DCs to even think about it. But
DCs.
Goosebumps. But we would do like a Led Zeppelin cover, which isn't so. And now that I'm a grown adult, that sounds fine. But,
Yeah.
but there was a point in my life where that just is ridiculous, that we were writing our own songs, but that we had to intentionally play songs that appealed to the crowd.
Yeah.
It was beyond me, at that point. I love Led Zeppelin, but the fact that we're like, no, we got to play this song so these biker guys will like what we're doing is just hilarious. And I think somewhere there's a video floating of this stuff, and it's ridiculous.
I was going to ask, is there a photo of you with your long hair?
Yeah,
somewhere?
Definitely photos.
How do I get
videos?
That photo?
I've never shown you a photo.
No.
Yeah, I'll dig one up.
Okay, good.
I feel like I've posted
We'll stick
them
it on the
Instagram.
video here.
Okay, yeah.
We'll put it right next to your head.
Yeah. Yeah, but so, having kind of gotten exposed to that side of things, I very quickly kind of jumped into the whole punk and hardcore thing, doing it yourself, going to shows in Boston, which there was a thriving hardcore scene at that time in Boston. So any chance we got, we were going into Boston and trying to play those shows with subsequent bands that I was in.
So was that timing great for you then? So were you riding that wave of this new underground punk? Is that about when it started, or were you kind of in the middle of it?
It's funny because all of that was happening. So when metal kind of gave way to Nirvana and all of that stuff, that was happening at this time, but we were like sub that, we not only was my band not big enough, but it was more that's even though that stuff was quote unquote underground or alternative, it was still mainstream, and we were far from mainstream. So a lot of the shows that I went to were more kind of off the grid from all of that stuff. It probably benefited from the rise of bands like Green Day, and I remember seeing Green Day at this free concert at the Hat Shell in Boston. That I think turned into a riot. It was a crazy experience. But even then, they were bigger than the type of shows that I was going to.
Yeah. But do you, and I've always kind of wondered this too with these underground bands, do you intentionally want to stay under the radar? Or like, could you theoretically, and I don't know how this, I've never been in a band, but like, could you get up higher to do more stuff if you wanted to, or do you intentionally want to stay underground?
It's a good question. So there was probably a point in my life where I would have loved to have made this a career, to do it full tilt. But throughout it all, though, it was always, on our own terms, though. So if I was going to do that, it would be playing the type of music that I wanted to. Even though I had many peers, and I know lots of people that are like, well, the cool thing now is, like at that time we said new metal and new metal, bands like Korn and all of that stuff, Limp Bizkit. Yeah. That was a big thing, in the 90s. So I knew people that kind of changed themselves to go in that direction. So I always despised that, kind of compromising artistic integrity, which sounds just ridiculous to say, but
it's true though.
But selling out, I guess, for lack of a better term. But there was probably a point in my life that I wanted to do that, to tour more often, to be in a band full time, even if possible. But I never had real delusions of grandeur, so to speak, that was a possibility.
What for you was holding you back? Was it just you thinking about your life and that not being part of it, or what was
probably the combination of knowing that I didn't want to compromise and play the type of music that would be big and huge and that everybody would like. A combination of that and maybe some healthy skepticism that only select few get that opportunity. I've had many friends that have gone on to be in bigger bands, and it's still a rare thing, to get to that point.
Yeah.
But I mean, for us, when you ask, is it intentional? It probably is intentional for us now. So it's incredible to me to think that we have played, in other parts of the country or overseas, because we do, being all grown, with children, married, all of that. For us, it really is just sort of a project. And usually when you're like our age and it's a project, you're talking about like a dad rock band, like Dad Blues.
Yeah.
Or, you're playing some covers at the local tavern, which would probably be a lot more lucrative for me and a wiser choice. But we, for whatever reason, are playing this kind of music that only a few people like. But getting these opportunities suddenly to play, throughout the country and overseas.
That's why it amazed me last year. You were in Spain. Is that where you were somewhere overseas like that?
Yeah.
Is that where it was?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Well, I think when you and I first started talking, we were going to play Germany that year.
Germany. That's what it was. That's when I first found out. Like, oh, I'm going to Germany with my band. I'm like, what band and what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have a band, Hammer in the Nails. We're going to Germany.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I did not expect that at all from you.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, but I had no idea that was even a thing with you.
Yeah. And then when you heard it,
and then I heard him,
you were like even more confused.
I was super confused. Like that's him singing it. And my fiance was like, that's Brian. I'm like, that's Brian.
Oh, you had to go and submit her to play that. Oh, okay.
Yep. She doesn't mind it. She likes all the stuff I like for the most part. She's a country girl, but I'm trying to break her.
I like country music too. So my tastes are all over the map.
Mine are too. I just don't like poppy, modern stuff. I'm such an old man with my music. Sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. But how do you balance the occasional trip overseas with family and P400 and just other stuff? Because I mean, you don't do it very often, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the funny thing with this band too, is that it's good. It's good to not be frustrated, like, oh, we're not getting more gigs, which I probably, at some point in my life felt that way. Oh, I wish we were playing more. We're fine. We're so busy, like you said, and trying to balance family and lives that we only play maybe 3 shows a year. So each time is sort of like revving back up and playing. And we record, we've actually been playing. you didn't ask this part, but we've been playing together since 2001. So forever we've been playing together. But it was always, I had another band, like a more kind of hardcore band called Close Call at that time. And that was kind of my main thing band-wise. So this was just sort of a project with friends to play this style of music. So it was very part-time at that point. And we had no intentions of ever playing live. We didn't play live until 2008.
Okay.
So we had just recorded. And at that point, I was just playing guitar. And we had different singers come and go. And then when we kind of ran out of ideas, it was like, okay, you sing. So then I had to figure out how to sing and play guitar at the same time.
That's how you figured out how to sing, was because you had to be a singer?
Because I had to,
Really? Interesting.
It was really strange because me and the drummer took turns doing, the songwriting duties. In terms of lyrics, we all, the whole band contributed to the music. But me and the drummer had been writing the lyrics. So I had sang at times for lack of a singer. But I never liked the idea of playing guitar and singing at the same time.
Yeah.
Never could quite get that right.
Yeah.
But then I was sort of forced to when we ran out of ideas for who would sing. And it was time to record. So it was like, okay, you do it. And I really liked it. And
I'm glad that you liked it. You kind of throw it into the fire and you took it and now you're the singer.
Yeah. But it didn't go great, in my opinion. I felt like I was doing 2 things kind of half-assed, trying to balance guitar and singing. So eventually I like to say that I kicked half of myself out. So I moved over to just singing and we got another guitar player to do the second guitar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because how important is it in your experience? Maybe you have stories too, but the band dynamic, and you've heard a million really popular bands break up and this and that because of differences and one thing doesn't work and whatever the hell happens. But how important is it to have that dynamic group of people all on the same mission doing something? And when something doesn't work, how do you address that? Like, has there been times where 100%. Someone hasn't been on the same vision as you guys, and how do you address that?
It's the most important thing, I think, in a band. And I've never really thought about it much with this band because we were so deliberate and intentional in what we were doing. as opposed to other bands where it was like, let's get together and jam and see where this goes. And then we ended up playing shows and recording and touring and all of that stuff. With this band, where it was really kind of, like I said, a side project, we were all on the exact same page, of what we wanted to do. So I think that's super important.
Yeah.
To have a good dynamic between the people in the band, but then also just to know like where we want to go, where we don't want to go. And then even with the style of music, to kind of have a sense of what you want to do and what you don't want to do, having those parameters is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've probably had the luxury in bands that I've been in. Like I said, I've been in bands since I was a little kid, and I've never done the whole like put out a classified ad or an ad at your local music shop looking for a guitar player. I think it's a recipe for disaster. More power to you if people have done that. But I think first and foremost, you need to be friends, have a good vibe, be able to sit in a practice space together for hours on end, be able to sit in a van together for hours on end.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm sure bands make it work with differences, and success kind of cures all problems. I think, although you've seen huge bands fall apart, but at least they somehow keep going. Van Halen got back together, Guns N' Roses got back together.
Yep.
You see it all over the place. But for a band that's not making money and is out there to play kind of their favorite kind of music, it has to work on the interpersonal level.
Yeah. But even in business, like I know, Ryan's here, he's in the corner over there in the dark working.
Yeah. Nobody puts Ryan in the corner.
I see him
over
there.
Actually they do. They put Ryan right
put
in
him
the corner.
So interesting enough, he just had the power corner. So this originally was his corner. When we first got in here from the older office, I said, pick any spot you want.
Yeah.
I gave him that, so pick wherever you want. He picked this corner because when he sits here, his desk would face the entire space in the office. That was his power corner.
Right.
When I told him that I wanted to make this the new podcast, he moved to that corner. So now that's his current power corner. It's not as powerful,
right?
But he's still, from time to time, I could sense that frustration when he gets over here that he doesn't have this as a power corner.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it seems almost equal to me.
It's almost equal. Yeah.
You can't see the door, but maybe that's better too.
It's probably better because now I get
distracting.
the brunt of the people who come in asking for people, so he kind of gets to hide in the shadows there.
Yeah.
But no, I was gonna say, so it's I guess similar to a band, having employees are really important who vibe with you.
Yeah.
We've become really good friends, I feel like, Ryan and I, and that's helped out tremendously with the company. Since we are a startup company, his help and my help growing the company are vital. I can do it, but not by myself. Having someone like him to help grow the company is extremely vital.
Right.
And similar to a band, when you're starting up this band and you're all fighting and things aren't vibing and working, you could be a very talented guitarist, but a shitty person, and it just is not going to work.
No.
I'd almost rather have someone like Ryan who's
not very talented.
Yeah. He's terrible at editing. He's terrible at shooting. He doesn't listen, but he's very good at getting the right people on a project.
Sure.
And we work well together. Yeah. So it's almost like, where is that balance in business, but also in a band too, which is, I think, a hard part of finding people.
Yeah, it really is. And there's that word balance again, which is a good trigger for me to get back to the question that I didn't fully answer for you. That to me is without overstating it, is so important in all aspects of life.
Yeah,
and I'm probably borderline obsessed with it. I think I've mentioned in the past to you that I'm a Libra. I'm not super into astrology or anything like that, but there's got to be something to do with it because I really do appreciate balance. And I was always taught by my parents to be well-rounded, to not get overly obsessed in any one area, which is interesting. I don't know if I listened to that part because I definitely stayed with the music thing.
Yeah.
But their point was to kind of find out where your interest lies and see where you land. I guess I chose music for my hobby, I guess.
Yeah.
But that essence of balance, even in approaching each day, has always been so important to me. When you talk about how to balance, a busy full-time job like I have with family and children and in a band as well, it's something that you have to actively work at every single day. You can't just accept it and hope that it comes together.
No,
it's something that
if people do think balance just happens, it's not. It's so far from the truth. You have to work constantly on getting that balance to work. Otherwise, something's gonna fall through the cracks. Whether it's your personal life, your family, your business, your hobby, something is gonna fall through the cracks if you're not working on it constantly.
Yeah, it's wild, and I think it also, just in terms of having balance of influences in your life, of things that are kind of coming at you, so having art, in your life, having music in your life, having something that you do outside of your family. I think family is super important, and for me, it's number one. But having something where your own identity is still intact, and that for me is I
love that.
Feel that I get that through the band.
I love that.
But that's super important, and that helps keep all other things in balance. So you're not really acting out. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, for me, it's working out. That, for me, keeps everything else together.
Working out, yeah.
Physically, I feel better, but mentally, it keeps my hobbies. That is my kind of hobby and lifestyle, but that keeps together everything else.
Right.
So it is, like you just said, like having your own identity, but keeping this all working is super important.
Yep. Yeah. See, that's funny. If you had me guess your answer to that, I would have thought it was work. I mean, to me, it seems like work is so...
It's so hard, and I have a really hard time separating personal and work life now, because they are so
overlap.
They're intertwined so well. And like, my fiance is good about telling me when I'm being too work oriented.
Yep.
Even now, when I get home, I have a very hard time.
Assigning her tasks, she starts to notice.
Yeah, you go do this, I'll go do this. Yeah. Which we're planning the wedding at this point, so we're already assigning tasks. She's really good at the task oriented thing. I'm more big picture stuff.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, it's so hard still for me to, if we're watching Netflix, to just watch Netflix. I'm thinking about something, I'll write down a business thing, I'll check my phone for something, and my fiance will like, just stop. Okay, I'll stop.
Unplug.
Yeah, but it's hard to separate those two when you're owning a business, and even with a band too. If you were to imagine this is your thing and it's your hobby full time, how hard would that be to separate your job, your personal life, your family? All of that is so hard to do.
I can't even imagine it. Yeah. And I have friends that do a great job of it, and I've seen others struggle with it. They get too into, let's say the band thing, they get too into the music thing, do too many shows, do too many tours,
get burnt out too,
for not too much return, lose track of their families.
Yep.
And I think, that lifestyle also can come along with other things too, like substance abuse and just too much partying, so there's that whole element when it comes to band stuff. So that, I think, is also a good secret ingredient of our band, is that we've also been pretty balanced about that, and not we're not the ones like looking for groupies and out partying all the time. Kids, so. Yeah. We still like to have fun, and we drink together and all that good stuff, but somehow we all do it in balance, so we're going back. You said Spain. We're going back to Spain, and not Spain. I always make sure I catch myself on this. It's Catalonia, which is, they've declared their independence. So they are a region of Spain, but they're trying to secede from Spain. So I try to be respectful to that. So, and they speak Catalan. It's a different language entirely, which was really unfortunate for me, because we went there and played in Lleida, Lleida, which is about an hour and a half outside of Barcelona. So the last time we went to Spain in Catalonia, that's where we played there. But I came here with all this Spanish. I had taken Spanish in high school and college. My sister lived in the Dominican Republic, so I had so many opportunities to speak Spanish, and I was ready to go, and they either spoke Catalan or would prefer you speak English.
So it didn't work out.
Yeah. So that was great. And I'm like, hola, didn't go too far. So that we're going back there to a place called Badalona in August for a huge festival that they do. And it's a beach festival, which I never thought like our kind of music would be at a beach festival. Like, picture spring break for like punks and skinheads and all these people in Catalonia.
I can't even picture that.
Yeah, I know. I say picture it, but you're like, no, I reject.
I can't picture that.
I reject the request. I cannot picture that.
I've been to many metal punk shows, and they do not seem like they even get out in the sun at all.
No, this is very sunny in August. In August. Wow. So it's going to be very hot. And it's funny too, because we never wear like shorts on stage. Like, I think it looks, I don't know, it just looks bad. Like, it looks, and we don't care how anybody dresses or anything like that. And I look regular. I dress like this.
Yeah.
But shorts on stage is kind of, I don't know, looks lame.
Looks.
But that might be the one place that you just physically have to.
You
wear
might
shorts on
have to
stage.
wear shorts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you got your dad tube socks with your New Balance white shoes.
Right. No way.
No. So okay, here we are, 2020. Brian Logan.
Yeah.
You've ran the gamut of different things, and I think the theme of the podcast is balance, which I think you definitely.
Is it? Oh my God! I just stumbled into that, or maybe here we are.
Or maybe here we are at the end. Yeah. But where do you think your career and your life are going now? You currently are, for better for worse, the P400's peak right now, but it will subside and disband after this year.
Yeah.
You have your band, which you said you do three or so tours a year. You have a family. Where do you see yourself now that you're in this position in 2020?
Yeah. Wow.
I'm putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I'll keep on doing what I'm doing, but I would imagine, like the rest of us on this staff here, we'll pursue other interests. With my background in tourism and marketing, I'd like to think it would be something in that space.
Sure.
I've had departures from that from time to time. I worked for a printing company where I was still doing their marketing services. Like I mentioned, I worked for Staples doing marketing services, focusing mostly on travel companies. So I've always kind of combined those things. So something in that realm. So I'll keep on keeping on throughout 2020, but the next step is definitely something still within marketing, possibly tourism.
Mm-hmm. And the band will still be what it is?
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, like I said, we still play songs that we wrote in 2001. So you can imagine lyrically, like, it's crazy, to have them still be relevant is kind of wild.
Yeah.
I was at such a different spot in my life at that point, but we'll keep on doing the band as long as possible. As long as these crazy European people are willing to fly us over to.
Well, I was going to say,
Europe.
you have a really diehard group of fans.
It's almost like that's what's keeping us going, because we write at a really slow pace. We record at a slow pace. We say no to 90% of the shows and tours we're offered. We're always offered all these different things, but it just doesn't line up with our schedules. Our drummer's a full-time musician. Our guitar player works for a fashion company in IT. Our other guitar player drives tractor trailer full-time for a company. Our bass player works in IT. So I don't think there's nothing that's pushing us to keep doing music, but the fact that somebody in Berlin or somebody in Spain is willing to fly us over there, it's not like we make money on it, but we bring merchandise, sell that, and they pay for all the accommodations.
Well, the experience must be incredible too.
Yeah. And we are good friends. So that's the other thing, is it's a great chance for friends to get away and do something together that otherwise 40-something, well, I guess we're not all 40-somethings, but 30 and 40-somethings wouldn't necessarily suddenly jut off and do together. So taking these opportunities where we get them. But for the most part, the band's always just, this particular band that I'm in has always just been about writing songs and hanging out together. So I don't know. I can't imagine anything would really stop.
Do you have plans for future albums already? Or
we're always recording something. So we're recording an EP with another band from Catalonia that we had played with over there. It's sort of a split collaboration between the two bands. So we're recording that in the next couple of months. We still have a record out now that we recorded, I guess it was 2 years ago now, but it came out last year. So we always have something new to sell, new music to download. But it's very slow process, very deliberate. And
slow,
our music is slow and deliberate as well.
Which makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
We play, plodding music, we like to say, which, as I say, it's not for everyone. So it's never all that fast.
Yeah.
It's deliberate.
But that's your marketing
music.
That's your marketing background. You're thinking about how maybe it is subconsciously you're thinking about, matching the music to how you market yourself and release albums. And
I don't know if it's my marketing background, it's okay. Everything that I've learned about marketing, let's do the exact opposite, because
maybe that's the thing.
We don't sell ourselves. I think we aggravate our, fans more than we make them happy. For a while there, we were slow at even sending out merch. Through some of the labels that we were working with. We were not fast to respond. So I don't think I'm taking all the cues from my marketing background for this band, because I think a lot of bands that are super into marketing get pretty cheesy about the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, so as much as I believe in marketing and the power of selling a concept, if I were to do that with my band, I don't think I could bear myself.
No, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So if people want to find out more about Hammering the Nails, where can they find out stuff, or are you so underground that it's hard to find?
You would have to write me a letter and
write you a letter, send you a pigeon. Yeah.
A carrier pigeon. No, lots of clips on YouTube. Facebook, we're pretty active on there. Tour dates are up there. So yeah, Hammer the Nails on Facebook. But if you ask the other guys in the band, they would probably just say we prefer people not even go there. But that's crazy because obviously somehow we're getting to these other places to play shows.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You got to find out somehow.
Yeah.
And then how about Plymouth 400? How can people find out more about? I know. Again, we're in it right now, but where can people go to find out about?
Yeah, and we'll have events all year long. So Plymouth 400, that's Plymouth Plymouth, as opposed to Plymouth Plantation, which is Plymouth.
Yeah.
So Plymouth Plymouth 400inc.org, Plymouth400inc.org for our website. All over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Very active on social media with Plymouth 400. So all sorts of information about our events. And not just our events, but our partners' events. So whether it be Pilgrim Hall Museum or places like Plymouth Plantation or anything that's going on for Wampanoag people, lots of different events all year long. Follow us on social media, Plymouth400inc.org.
And we'll be there too, because we're going to be helping out with some of the events.
Every step of the way.
Yeah.
And if you go to these different spaces, whether it's Facebook or the website, you're going to see a lot of Hawk Visuals photography and drone footage as well. So
I know that one image of this street at sunset is everywhere.
Yeah, people really like that.
I appreciate.
Yeah. No, it was a look. And a lot of your stuff does this, but it was a look of Plymouth that people hadn't necessarily seen before.
Yeah.
It was a perspective on Plymouth, not just aerial, but a certain time of day, certain look that hadn't really been captured before. Yeah. And I think people really gravitated to that one.
I think so too. Awesome. Thank you for being a part of the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah.
All right.